All right, so we got 93. That's probably about everyone. I don't know off the top of my head how many people are in this section, but welcome. Yes, it's great to be back. I missed you all. Let's see. Go by the desktop first. Yeah, exactly. That occurred to me as well. Anyways, welcome back, everyone. So a lot of you I will know already, there's going to be some others here. We're welcoming in some students also from who had other professors for Organic 1, so you're welcome too. If we haven't met before, I'm Jack Wass, and I'm going to be your lecture instructor this term. Not necessarily so much your lab instructor, although actually some of you may have me listed as your lab instructor. A note on that, by the way, I actually have nothing to do with lab. I don't know anything about the curriculum. I should learn some more, actually. I have nothing to do with grading or attendance or anything like that. Occasionally, someone will email me about that, and they'll be like, I don't know. I have a theory on this. My theory is that it must be at least a state law, maybe even a federal law, who knows, that for a lab course, there has to be a professor of record with a PhD. So that's my own theory. If you do have questions of any kind on lab, other than your TA, the one to contact is Carrie Nichols. I'll put her name in chat. She knows everything. And if you ask her a question that she doesn't know, she will know who does know, but she pretty much knows everything. Okay, so this term I'm teaching 2 sections of Chem 228. You're the second. It's going to look very much like last term, except that this term is completely online. Let's see. We'll get to clickers and all that. That's going to be part of grading. We're going to go over the syllabus. That's mostly what we'll do today, is go over the syllabus. I saw some emails go out about lab. Certainly my understanding is there's no lab this week. That affects me too, and in turn us, because that's going to affect what my office hours are going to be. So I don't really know yet what my office hours will be. Basically, I'm planning to show up maybe, I don't know, half an hour or so before my, this is all screwed up. Ignore these office hours, this is gonna change. But I'm going to be, I'm gonna show up like right before, maybe half an hour before my first section of 228, which starts at 10:40. So I'll be there between 10 and 10:15. You don't have to be in that section. You're welcome to show up if you have a couple questions. And then I'll stick around in between the 2 classes like I did today. At most, I might eat my lunch. So if you don't mind my munching on things, then I can answer questions then. I also have 1 section of Chem 227, which is Tuesday, Thursday from, this is completely wrong. Anyway, it's Tuesday, Thursday from 11:30 to 12:45. So I'll probably show up around, this should say 11 to 11:30 or something like that. But I'll probably show up then. I'm also planning to have some in-person office hours in my office in Reed McDonald 308. But the thing is, I don't know when my lab supervision times are. I always have asked them for the Wednesday evening lab, and I've always had that, and I anticipate they'll give me that one again. I don't know that I will probably have 3. I may have only 2, but I'll probably have 3 labs to supervise, and I don't know when they are yet. So as soon as I know that, I'll update. I'll put up a new version of the syllabus with my office hours. So currently, I still don't entirely know when they'll be. That might not apply to you since I'm in person. Oh, you're talking about lab. Yeah. Yeah. So our classes are completely online this term. What I've heard through the rumor mill is that the administrators noticed what we all noticed last term too, those of us who were in a mixed format, or hybrid format, like ours were. And as you recall, as the semester went on, by the end of the term, maybe at most 10% of the class was showing up in person, even if they were signed up for being in person. My section of Chem 222 was even more extreme. There were something like 180 students in that class, and I had days when maybe 3 or 4 would show up for in person. So I've also said, and I want to be very clear on this, I've also said that I don't blame you guys at all, those of you who did that last term. I would have done the very same thing if I were in your place. Why get all cleaned up and dressed and all that if you don't have to? You know, I would have done the very same thing. But I think for that reason, that's why they said, we'll just make all of these classes completely online. So I plan to run it pretty much like we did last term, except instead of most of you being in chat, all of you will be in chat. But other than that, I think it will basically go much the same. And as I know, I also said last term, I basically consider organic chemistry to be a year-long course that we just take a big break in the middle. And I'm just going to pick up right where we left off. So some of you had other professors. That's why I put my Organic 1 lecture notes as well as my Organic 2 lecture notes on eCampus. So, and even if you had me and you want to take a look at them again, absolutely feel free. I've got some old exams with answer keys posted there as well. This way you can get an idea of what I'm expecting you to have from, to have mastered from Organic 1. In particular, some of us go over chapters 17 and 18 and some don't. I'm one of the ones who does. So if you had someone else and you didn't really go over those chapters, I suggest you take a look at those class notes. I'm not going to go over that material again. We have to move on, but if you have questions on any of that and want to ask them in office hours, please do. Don't hesitate.
What was covered in, sorry, what was covered in chapter 17 and 18? I didn't have a professor who went by chapter.
Oh, 17 was alcohols and 18 is very short. 18 is ethers. So there's almost nothing to say about ethers. They're pretty inert. I think we covered it in one class day. So, but yeah, definitely look at the class notes if you like. What was I going to say about that? A little more on myself if I'm new to you. This is the middle of my 6th year here full-time at A&M, but it is not only my 6th year teaching. You don't need to worry about that. I've plenty been around the block. Before I came down here in 2015, I had spent 16 years teaching at a little school in Minnesota. I don't know why. I hate cold weather. So partly for that reason, partly because really all of my family is down south. And all of what little family I have is down south. And most of them live in the greater Houston area. My mother is retired out there. My aunt and uncle and 2 of my cousins and their families are in Houston proper. And on top of that, I believe some of you might have had, or at least you know of Dr. Jim Pennington. I don't know if you're aware of this, but he's an old friend of mine. He and I went to grad school together in the 1990s. So I've known him and his wife forever, for years and years and years. Was at school of Bemidji? No, I taught at Bethel University, which when I started there was Bethel College, and they changed their name to Bethel University about my 3rd year there. So, but I got sick of the cold weather and sick of the snow. I enjoy hot weather, so there were just a number. Oh, and I forgot to mention also, I've had a long-standing research relationship with Dr. Daniel Singleton and his research group, going back to about 2005 or thereabouts, which means I would spend every summer in Texas doing research with his group, and then go back and spend every winter in Minnesota, which I think you'll agree is just about the dictionary definition of doing it wrong. So it just made sense for so many reasons for me to come down here when this position became available. And I've really enjoyed my time down here. I've enjoyed interacting with A&M students. I've been very impressed with you guys so far. So it's been good. I do not plan to leave. As long as you guys will have me, I'm staying in Texas. I need to get me that bumper sticker that says I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as soon as I can. Actually, I was raised in New Jersey, so although I've spent half my life in the Midwest at this point, I'm not from there originally either. So, but I'm here to stay. Those are my two cats. They're busy sleeping or almost sleeping. The gray one on the left is Bella. She's going to be 15 years old in May. She's an old lady. And she has no teeth whatsoever since I had to have them removed a few years ago. Poor Bella. She's fine, though. She's fine. She eats dry cat food. I have no idea how. I think she just inhales it. But that's Bella. And Barnaby is my newer cat. He's on the right. I adopted him back in June. I call him my fake Siamese cat because he is Siamese coloration. But if you look at him carefully, if you look at his face and his body shape, that is no Siamese cat. If you know anything about Siamese cats and anything closely related like Burmese or Oriental Shorthair like that, they're elongated. Everything's long. Their trunk is long, their limbs are long, their face is long, and his is not that way at all. So he's a mutt. I don't really know what he is, but he's definitely a mutt. He's very sweet, but he only trusts me. He's afraid of cats. Yeah, he's still scared of people. He's afraid of cats. That being said, though, since I brought up the cats, we used to have Bella Day. I used to bring her in to my office on the reading day of finals week every semester. And she enjoys it. She's decided to go to sleep now, but she enjoys it because she's much too dumb to be afraid of anyone. She's just dumb as a brick and loves everyone. So, I mean, she's quite old now. I think she's in good health. Assuming there is still a Bella in May, I think we'll do that again. I think we're allowed, right? Because if I'm having in-person office hours and they're having in-person classes, it should be allowed. So maybe we'll do Bella Day this term. If the worst, I mean, I just don't take it for granted with cats because, as any of you who has had cats will know, when they are what I think down here they call fixing to die, it's very, very fast, very sudden. They hide it as long as they can. Cats are so vain. So, I mean, I think her health is pretty good, but if the worst should happen, I have a backup cat. Actually, Dr. Pennington has outdoor yard cats. And they're all friendly, but there's one in particular who really loves people. And so if the worst happens, I even have a backup plan. Instead of Bella Day, we'll have Earl Day. He's Gray Earl. So anyway, enough about cats. We went over office hours. There's my email address. Email certainly works better than phone, especially since I'm not going to be in my office all that much. So certainly only call if you know that I'm in my office. There's another email address for me going around that's like jwas@tamu.edu. That one doesn't necessarily work all the time. I recommend using this one. And I'll also point out, please note my name is 2 A's, 1 S, W-A-A-S. I have more trouble with my name for being such a short name, you wouldn't believe. Okay, and I think you've seen all these things before. The course learning outcomes are the same. We have all of them for both Organic 1 and Organic 2. I'm sorry, I have to change the share. Hang on. There we go. So, but yeah, I have my email address and stuff up there. And again, I would say my office hours are TBA, or TBD, to be determined. So we'll finish all of these learning outcomes. Textbook is the same. OWL will be the same. I had put up, looks like we have a link here, which should help. I had put up course keys which were wrong. Sorry about that. I accidentally put up ones from a previous term. So I have some helps here for signing up for OWL. I've heard there's also going to be sessions either on campus or maybe even via Zoom to help people sign up for Cengage products because it's not necessarily intuitively obvious how to do that. For some reason, I've noticed over these years, some students get asked for a course key and others do not. I don't know why. But if you need it, it will be on eCampus. Just use the one for section 515, which is what you are. Let's see. Someone made a group me for the other section, or I don't know if it's for the, I don't know anything about that. Students usually make that themselves on their own. So let's see, I think that's all I need to say about that. Let me just keep an eye on the time. We have till 12:50. I only need from about 12:40 or 12:42 to go over a little bit of material. We'll have hardly anything to say about ultraviolet and visible spectroscopy, but we'll at least be able to get started. So we'll do the, they were talking about it in my previous section, making a group me, my section 513, 1040 to 1130. So if you know anyone in that section, you might ask about it, but I know nothing about that. They always invite me to come to join the group me, and I'm like, no way, because people are going to be talking about me. I don't want to be in on that. We'll keep that. We'll let that stuff stay private. Okay, so I used to do a weighted average thing for calculating grades. Oh, there you go. There's something in chat. Basically, I would say clickers or reef is 10% of your grade. OWL is 10% of your grade. 4 exams, which are each 15% of your grade, for a total of 60%, and then the final exam is 20%. But last term, I did an experiment of working on a point basis, which I think students are more used to. And the feedback I got even during the term was people like that. It's more what they're used to. I realized I could make everyone happy by simply making sure that the points add up to a factor of 10. So if it adds up to 1,000 points, then you can think of it either way and it'll work out. So we'll do the same thing this term. I'll say more about reef and OWL also as we get into that. These are our grade cutoffs. I don't know that anyone's going to be taking the class pass or fail, but SU is pass fail. The question I always get, and again, I address that here in the syllabus, is if I will lower the cutoffs at the end of the term. And my most honest answer is I hope so. I want to lower them. I intend to if I possibly can. It's not entirely up to me though. But I can only make that decision at the very end of the semester when all of the data is in. So what I like to tell students is to plan on the worst case scenario, plan on what it will look like if the cutoffs are not lowered, and that way, if there's any surprises at the end of the term, they will be pleasant ones. I found that works out best for all concerned. And I do the best I can, that's at least as far as is in my power, to make sure any surprises are pleasant ones. It's not completely in my power. I like to tell the story about 3 years ago. After the semester ended, a girl emailed me wondering why she'd had a B and not an A. And I looked her up and she was at like an 83. I'm like, no, that's a B. I'm sorry. So, you know, something like 82 is a B, not an A. 72 is a C, not a B. You know, at some point you have to be reasonable about it. Certainly, I would say a person with an 899 at the end of the term is overwhelmingly likely to get an A. 99.9% likely, 799, you've 99.9% got your B for sure. But I just can't say 100% unless you make those cutoffs. And then at the end of the term, we'll see. Good, so I don't need to go over all that again. Maybe I'll talk about, well, where do I talk about reef questions? I might have gone over that already. I mean, I might have flown over it in the syllabus. Well, but I did. I did. Okay, yeah. Maybe it's before this. Well, I am confusion. Here it is. Clicker credit. There we go. Good. So here I talk about iClicker reef. I do want to spend a couple minutes showing you how to sign up for it. So maybe when we're done talking about this, I'll show you, because it is not intuitively obvious. We're doing the Monday, Wednesday, Friday format. So I'm anticipating maybe on average once a week, we'll do a reef polling session where you have to actually answer questions for points. The other times I will probably just take attendance, which means I know you have to pay to use the reef app. The free app only lets you take attendance, and I hate making you guys spend more money. But the feedback I get is those reef sessions for credit are actually somewhat helpful. Even on those days where we do clicker or reef clicker type questions, probably 80 of the 100 points, or at least maybe 70 at the very least, will be just based on attendance anyway. So most of it's going to come from attendance. On a typical day where we just take attendance, basically you will have 3 possibilities for your score, either 0, because you're not there, or your thing malfunctioned or whatever. That's why I'm going to drop at least 25% of the grades. I lowered that from 30, first of all, because it's the second semester. Second of all, because I really do believe the majority of our sessions are just going to be attendance. And so like I said, in those days, it'll be 0 if you didn't register your attendance, 100 if you did, and the third possible grade you can get for that day is excused. That is a thing also. And as long as you let me know in advance, I'm usually pretty lenient about giving excused absences. And so those don't count at all. It's just as if that class never existed for you. Other days you might have like an 80 or a 90 or a 100. And all those average together at the end of the term. We'll take the average of that after taking out the lowest 25%. We are section 515, are we not? Yeah, I believe so. My other section is 513 from 1040 to 1130. So that being, oh, right, I was going to show you, before we go on to OWL, I was going to show you how to sign up for this. And I think you'll see this is, I can't believe after all these years they haven't made this a little easier to access. But you'll go to the iClicker website. You can find it just by doing a Google search for iClicker. And you will sign in. I'll sign in as a student, as I have both types of accounts. You might have to make an account if you've not done that yet. Okay, and if you've already signed up for any classes, they'll show up here. I wonder if I can archive that. No, not delete. Well, I'll do that later. So here's the part that you would never have guessed if you've got, especially if you've got like a blank slate here. You can't see my screen. That should solve that problem. So this is the part that you would never have guessed. Especially if you've got like a blank slate here, you still, everyone can see now, right? Just want to make sure. Still no. I wonder what happens if I do this. Does it then show you just whatever window I have in front? Is that better? Okay, we'll go with that then. So it's showing all of the classes that I basically have listed. What you need to do, especially if you're not shown any courses here, you need to click on this plus sign over here, which again, I don't see any possible way that you could possibly have known that. But that's what you do. You'll type in Texas A&M over here. It's showing up for me already as kind of an autofill type thing. Of course, you'll sign up for the main campus, not Qatar or Galveston or anything like that. At that point, you can search, I think Chem 227 would work. Yeah, wait. How about 228? Yeah, that would be better. How about Chem 228? And so in your case, you'll pick out section 515 and you'll add into that. But that's how to do it. But I really think they should make that a little more user-friendly. Good, so much for that. Let's test this. Can you guys see the syllabus again? I feel like I'm giving you an eye exam or something like that. But hopefully we're back to that. So that's how you sign up for Reef. We've already gone over how to sign up for OWL. Oh, one quick thing on OWL. Nothing's going to be due this week. At least nothing's going to be due this week that will count towards your grade. I would never do that to you guys. It takes a little time to sign up. My philosophy on OWL is I try to avoid having more than one chapter due on any given Friday. I think it might be unavoidable. I wouldn't be surprised if at least chapters 1 and 2 are due next Friday, not this coming Friday, but the one after. I try to avoid that. That being said, occasionally it will probably work out once or twice that you guys will get a bye week and nothing will be due on a given Friday. Basically, once you're signed up, check the OWL website. Be sure that you've selected the tab that says view all assignments, because otherwise it sometimes for some reason doesn't show it even if it's coming up due. But one thing I also want to say as clear as I can at the beginning is assignments that specifically say not graded are not graded, obviously. They won't count towards your grade. If it doesn't specifically say that it's not graded, then it's graded. And likewise, if it does say not graded, you don't have to email me and ask me if it's not graded. You can trust that. I will never change something from not graded to graded. So, but the ones that do not say not graded will count towards your grade. I think other than that, you guys are pretty familiar with OWL from last term. I have a somewhat different policy on the OWL grades, as you can see over here. My policy is that you only need to average 80% overall in your OWL assignments to get full points for OWL at the end of the term, 100 out of 100. The reason for that is pretty much every assignment, you'll probably find a few questions that you think were unfairly graded. Rightly or wrongly, but you will think that they were unfairly graded. And that's going to be different questions for different students. So I think that this is the best way to handle that. It takes off a lot of the pressure. You don't feel like you have to get every last stupid point. So you only need to average 80% in order to get full points at the end of the term. And one thing, someone asked about this in the last class, it was a very good question. Please notice that I did not say you need to get 80% on every assignment. You don't. You only need to average 80%. And since you're familiar, I think by now with, you've got your mastery and your EOCs, right? So I think you all know it's not a pipe dream to get 95+% on all of the masteries, right? Since you have 10 tries, you get hints and it shows you correct answers and all this kind of thing. So that's not very hard to do. So I think averaging 80% is not that difficult. What if you do not average 80% at the end of the term? Again, if you have higher than 80%, you won't get extra credit. And I described that in this paragraph on the syllabus. So you'll either get full 100 out of 100 if you have 80% or higher. If your average is below 80%, then we'll divide it by 0.8, which sounds a little strange, but let me show you how this works. Let's just say that at the end of the term, your overall OWL percentage is 64%. I'm picking a number that'll make it easy for me. And I think you'll agree 64% is kind of dismal. Well, 64 divided by 0.8 is 80. So that means that instead of 64 out of 100, you'll get 80 out of 100 at the end of the term. So it's pretty generous and it helps everyone out. And I think that someone's talking about it. I think other instructors are starting to use that this term. It saves me a ton of trouble too, let me just tell you. Because otherwise it's constant emails, oh, I lost a point on this. So this way I don't have to officiate any of that. I think this more than makes up for any potential unfairness. which there's going to be some when things are graded by computer as opposed to by human eyes. It really can't be avoided. So, so much for that. Exams will go pretty much like last term, with one major exception that I'll get to in a moment, but except that they'll be entirely online. So I think we've worked that out. Is there going to be an SI? Yeah, I think we have the same SI as last term. To think of her name, Maria Antonescu. She'll probably reach out to you eventually. At least that's who they told me. And then Bella has asked, not Bella the cat, but Bella in our class, has asked the question that's on everyone's mind. I've been told that we're going to move to open book and open note for exam, open notes. The reason for that being, it's always just possible that some people were using it last term when they weren't supposed to. My feeling is it's not as much of a help as you might think. I will just let you know that, and you know this from taking our exams. Also, those of you who had other professors, I have old exams there on eCampus. You know that there's not going to be time to look up every single thing. You'll run out of time otherwise. So you're still going to have to really know everything. You'll still have to master the material just like you always would have. But there will be time to double check some things. And my feeling, I said this to my previous class too, my feeling is if this prevents some of the sort of sillier mistakes, like people confusing ETOH and ET2O, you know what, I'm okay with that. If that saves us from some of that, I'm fine with that. So that's what, so fine details like that. If you need to look up an occasional reagent just to make sure you spell it right, you know, that's fine. And really, I'm okay with that. But, you know, you're not going to be able to copy down anything. You know nothing's going to be exactly like it is in the book. So it's not like you'll be able to open the book or even your class notes and copy it down. You have to know it. The mechanisms you'll need to know, right? I'll be giving you, if I do my job right, I'll be giving you molecules that are different from both in the book and in the class notes. So you need to know it. But if that saves some of these sillier mistakes, I'm comfortable with that. I think that's just fine. Will exams be proctored? Yes, I will be proctoring them by Zoom. You'll just do the same thing as you did today for class, except you'll also have the exam open. To get an idea of possible question formats, you can check my old exams on eCampus. I don't usually use very much multiple choice. There may be a couple multiple choice questions, but you can get an idea. Now, I do not promise that your exams will be exactly like that in format or difficulty. This is why, actually, I know that I have kind of reputation deserved that, and it's something I'm working on, that I don't necessarily respond the best way when people ask, what do we have to know on the exam? Will this be on the exam? What's the question format going to look like? What do we have to put in order to get credit? The reason that I respond the way I do is because I think that's not the way to go in order to succeed in this class. That's not the way to think about it to best help yourself to master the material. So that doesn't excuse my behavior, but it does, my behavior does have a reason. And I've really been thinking about this a lot over the break. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos, which of course I do anyway. I found some by a very interesting person. Will I still be uploading lectures to YouTube? Yes, I'm recording right now. I actually recorded my previous class, the time in between, and this class in a lockdown browser or document that we write on. The second thing, I've heard only bad things about lockdown browsers. I've heard that they just crash all the time. But we'll have more to say about these details about the exams as we get closer. Yeah, those bad things are correct. Oh, and they sell your data. Excellent. Well, you know what they say, right? If the product is free, then you are the product. Yeah, I had this type sort of thing too. I had people running into troubles even without lockdown browsers. But in any case, we'll get more into the details of exams as time goes on. But I have posted old exams with answer keys on eCampus, and you can take a look at those. Anyway, I've thought a lot over the break about learning styles, how to teach, how to learn organic chemistry, all that kind of thing. And I found some lectures by an interesting person, Dr. Temple Grandin. I'll put her name in chat. She is a professor. She is also heavily involved in the livestock industry. The cow lady, exactly, yes. She's heavily involved in the livestock industry. She's got to be upwards of 70 by now, so she might be retired. But she is also autistic, obviously very high functioning, has learned to use it to her advantage. And as a result, she's learned something about learning styles. She describes her own learning style as being photorealistic images in her head. That's absolutely not my learning style, by the way. I am not a visual learner. Many people are, by the way, let me be very quick about that. What your learning style is and whether or not you're autistic are two completely unrelated things. I just want to be very, very clear about that. And hers is only one way of dividing up the different learning styles. There's many other ways. Another person I watched a couple lectures from at Dr. Pennington's suggestion was one Dr. Robert Bjork. And so after learning all this from Dr. Grandin, his thing is immediately out of the gate, there is no such thing as learning styles. Well, you know, what are you going to do? Who are you going to believe? But in any case, Dr. Grandin, if you can catch one of her videos, she talks a lot about a learning style that involves patterns, people who are pattern thinkers. I turn out to be one of those, though I think I'm also a little bit verbal. We don't necessarily have just one learning style. But that is the type of learning style that we need to develop, even if we weren't lucky enough to be born with that learning style, that we need to develop in order to succeed at organic chemistry and by extension, a lot of other things later on. You need to develop that kind of learning style really to succeed in any kind of science, I think. And I do consider medicine a science, by the way. You have to keep up on things. You have to look to those patterns that you've learned to diagnose and treat your patients. So my big message, if I had to put it all very quickly here at the beginning of the term, my main message is going to be you can trust patterns. It is okay to trust patterns. And I encourage you to become comfortable with trusting patterns. Don't immediately get sidetracked by what all of the exceptions are and what you'll have to put in order to answer the question. It's okay to worry about those things, not at first. If we learn a pattern that works 95% of the time, or even 85% of the time, you know what? That's pretty good. And I would encourage you to learn to become comfortable trusting patterns. If they're true 90% of the time or something like that, that's pretty good. Means you can probably use that on exams. That's probably going to be something useful. Anything that seems to be an exception, probably, I mean, there are always exceptions, but if we don't run into them except a couple times now and then it's pretty good still to know the pattern. Knowing the pattern is not useless. It's very useful. Lots of times when we think at first we've run into an exception, what's happened is that it's not an exception, but that there's two different concepts or three different concepts going on in that question that we're considering. That's much more common than it being actually an exception. But that's my new message to you guys here at the beginning of this term. It's okay to trust patterns. Please learn to become comfortable trusting patterns. It will do you no end of good in this class. So, and we can say more about exams as we get closer. But let's see. So as you see, I have a topic outline, a class schedule in here that includes the day's topics. I want to update it because The authors of your book were very silly using dashes in section numbers. It's really confusing. They should have used something logical like periods. But really, I want to get rid of these colons so that we'll replace every colon with TO. I think that will make that page a little clearer. So I'm taking it for granted I'm going to have to update your syllabus at least once. Certainly, at the very least, once I know what my office hours are going to be. So that's another change I plan to make. I thought I already had made that change, but apparently not. There's basically a few different types of chapters. Here at the beginning of the term, we're going to cover most of spectroscopy. Spectroscopy is a method involving absorption of organic compounds of light, of photons of light, or of electromagnetic radiation. And from that, we derive information about the structure of the material. And we understand that when organic molecules absorb photons of light of various kinds, they undergo what's called a transition. It's kind of a reversible change. And the type of transition depends on the type of light that's absorbed. It could be photons of radio waves. We'll cover that when we get to NMR spectroscopy, nuclear magnetic resonance. Those cause transitions at the level of atomic nuclei. It could be infrared light, and we'll get to that very soon. Actually, you've talked about that also in lab quite a bit. We'll still go over it somewhat next term. I want to make sure that we're all fairly clear on IR spectroscopy. But IR photons cause transitions, as you know, at the level of bonds. So they cause bonds to stretch, to vibrate, to twist, this type of thing. Today, we're going to consider what happens when an organic molecule absorbs photons of ultraviolet or visible light. And there are other types of spectroscopy, by the way, that we never cover. Microwave spectroscopy is a thing. It's not really too useful for us. It's not in your book. We're not going to cover it. But we're going to cover the main ones that are used at all in organic chemistry. That comes first, except for one type of NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance. Proton NMR, I put off till almost the end. And I have good reasons for that, which the main one that I'll tell you about at first is proton NMR is significantly more complicated than carbon NMR. So I'd like to cover carbon first so we don't have to open all those cans of worms. It will mean that your chapter 13 owls will be due very late in the term. They will not be due around this time because we won't have done proton NMR yet. So they'll be available. I would certainly recommend at that point that you do all the questions you can, but they won't be due until whatever that is, sometime in April, I think. Yeah, not until sometime in April. So we also will have traditional organic chapters. We also will have biochem related chapters, which I've spaced throughout the semester in ways that, again, I believe I have a method to my madness with where I put them. That's going to be useful, I think, especially for those of you going on in biochemistry, which I realize is not all of you, but it's probably 80% of you. And we're going to cover those topics from the perspective of an organic chemist. We're going to cover it in terms of structure. As always, you know we organic chemists are obsessed with structure. Certainly mechanism where possible, reactivity for sure. And that I think is going to be very good. Actually, I don't think, I know it because I've gotten feedback from past students. It will be good background for those of you going on in biochem, because your biochem professors are going to focus on exactly not these things, something very different. And then if you're in that other 20%, these last 2 or so class days are for you when we cover the chapter on polymers. If you're going into engineering or material science or like that, and again, even if not, you know, come on, polymers are only one of the most important technological advances of the 20th century. So I think it's worth going over that as well. And we've also got a chapter on metabolism too. Other than that, I'm beginning to run low on time. I'll stick around a little bit to answer questions after also. But I want to be sure that we cover the bare minimum at least. Not, there's really not anything really beyond the bare minimum. The bare minimum is enough on ultraviolet and visible spectroscopy. And I already gave a little bit of background on spectroscopy. Ultraviolet and visible light gets absorbed by organic molecules mainly that have pi bonds. And in order to understand the type that's the most relevant, by the way, I assume you can all see my ChemDraw at the moment. I think I'll largely teach using ChemDraw. If that doesn't work, this supposedly is a touch screen, and we'll come up with something else. But, oh, by the way, someone asked about YouTube videos. If you look back on my YouTube channel, which by the way is R86 Chemistry, for reasons of historical importance to me that would otherwise be boring to everyone else, but that's where I'll be uploading our videos, including today's. I don't know if I'll take yours or the first sections. But if you look there, you'll find my 228 videos from a year ago, that second half of the term where we went completely online. That was non-concomitant, or whatever they call it, meaning that I made the lectures sort of talking to myself instead of how I'm talking to you, and then I had office hours online. I'll do the videos pretty much like last term. I'll do some light editing. I'll first decide whether I'll take your classes or the previous classes, whichever one I thought went well. I'll certainly trim the beginning and the end. If there's a period in the middle where I just sort of go on a rant for 2 minutes, which I occasionally do, I'm so sorry, but I'll certainly try to cut that out and keep everything relevant. So that's the way that will work. But you can see some of the material already. Anyway, ultraviolet and visible light especially comes into play when you've got a molecule that has what we call conjugated double bonds. And I'm using this structure, this picture, as a definition for that term. Conjugated double bonds are those that are separated by exactly one single bond. And conjugated double bonds are special. They have some extra types of reactivity, which we'll actually get to very soon in this class. Double bonds that exist just by themselves or further away than that are called isolated double bonds. And by the way, everything we say about double bonds here, these don't have to be carbon-carbon double bonds. They can be double bonds between any two elements, carbon-oxygen, carbon-nitrogen, whatever you like. We still use the same terms. Cumulated double bonds are kind of rare. This molecule, which you can call 1,2-propadiene, or you can also call it allene, and I really don't care if you call it either of those two things, but if you're curious what that's called, we can call that compound allene. It is a thing. This is what we mean by cumulated double bonds. They're both coming off the same atom. And hopefully you can refresh your memory on this and recall that that central carbon atom in such a molecule is sp hybridized, right? Not sp2. The same is true for carbon dioxide. That also has cumulated double bonds. But conjugated double bonds are special. Molecules absorb, organic molecules absorb ultraviolet light, but as you get more and more conjugated double bonds, which for reasons which go well beyond the scope of this course, we'd have to get into quantum mechanics, but it turns out that the wavelength of maximum absorption, the wavelength at which it absorbs most of the light, gets longer and longer wavelength as we get more and more conjugated double bonds. Now, of course, I would never expect you to memorize any lambda max values, nor would I ever say, you know, here's a molecule, what is its lambda max value? Of course not. That would be outrageous. But you can make comparisons between different molecules using this idea. And you'll see some questions on OWL that will give you an idea. It'll probably ask you to rank 3 or 4 molecules in order from highest to lowest or lowest to highest lambda max value. These are just some examples. I mean, I had to look up those lambda max values. I sure don't have them memorized. Eventually, when you get more and more conjugated double bonds, eventually the absorption moves out of the ultraviolet range into the visible range. And that's when organic molecules will have a visible color that it will take on. We'll be able to see. You know, you start getting 6, 8, 10, 12 conjugated double bonds. And these are your molecules like beta carotene or melanin's kind of like this, I believe, or the molecules that are in the retina of your eye that are involved in vision have a whole ton of conjugated double bonds. And so what's the cutoff from ultraviolet to visible? When does it start to become violet? Maybe 400 nanometers, somewhere like that, 380, somewhere about. So it gets above that, then it becomes visible. That varies from person to person. People have different visual ranges. My understanding is that other things being equal, women have a slightly wider visible range than men do. You can look that up. I mean, don't trust me because I said it, but I recall reading that somewhere. So like I said, there's very little else that we can do with ultraviolet visible spectra. UV-vis spectra are very broad and featureless, and you certainly would not find it possible to look at a UV-vis spectrum and go, ah, yes, that is lycopene. It just doesn't work like that. Infrared, we can get quite a bit more information out of. And so that's what we're going to start on next time. But this really is all I think we really need to say about UV-vis spectroscopy. So other than that, I'm out of time. I can stick around a little bit if people have questions. Other than that, I will stop the recording and I will see you all on Friday.